You may recall, earlier in the year, you did a research study. A study that asked you lots of interesting questions about how you felt in the morning before you went to work, or whether you liked yourself when you looked in the mirror. Well, what does that all mean? To help people understand the feedback we get from the research study, we use a simple model. The simple model consists of 4 key areas. These 4 key areas are given to us by our levels of energy, whether they be high or low, and our habitual attitude choices, either positive or negative. And this allows us to place people in a number of interesting areas. We'll start in the top right-hand corner, where we have people with high levels of energy, a positive attitude, and high self-esteem. We call these people players. These people actively help us move the organisation forwards, either by being positive and supporting in what we're trying to do, or even challenging sometimes what we try and do. A player will often say, "That's not a great idea, there's got to be a better way," as well as supporting what we're trying to achieve. Moving across to the top left-hand corner, we start to identify people with low levels of energy, still a positive attitude, and still high self-esteem. These people we call supporters. They actively support everything we're trying to achieve, working away in the background without needing to be in the spotlight all of the time. In the bottom left-hand corner, we have some really unfortunate individuals. These people have low levels of energy, negative attitudes most of the time, and critically, low self-esteem. We call these people walking dead or zombies. The walking dead are typified by a behaviour which goes with the flow, never asking himself the question, where's the flow leading me to? In the bottom right-hand corner of our model, our box breaks into 2 distinctly different individuals. In the upper corner we have people with high levels of energy, negative attitude, but still critically low self-esteem. We call these individuals snipers. Snipers take pot shots at everybody else's great ideas. They whinge and moan and bleat about what'll never happen here, what we can never achieve. In the bottom right-hand corner of our model, we have people with extremely high levels of energy, negative attitude, but critically high self-esteem. This is even sometimes called pathological self-esteem. We call these people cultural terrorists. They constantly undermine and disrupt the whole organisation by preying on the low self-esteem individuals in the team, by feeding them with the bullets to fire and the missiles to throw. How come most organisations end up with people below the attitude line? How come we end up with people with low self-esteem in our business? Well, imagine what happens to a player who sticks his hand up and says, "Hey boss, I've got a better way of doing this job," and is told to shut up and put up and get on with his job. How many times will he put his hand up again before his self-esteem gets damaged? If his job is his life and his job goes down the pan, so does he feel like his life does too. And that's why we end up with low self-esteem people in a business. Players become snipers, supporters become zombies. When you ask managers and leaders, which part of this model do they focus on to help the business improve? They'll say things like 90% of their time is focused on the 10% of people below the line. I wonder what message that sends to the people above the line. What happens to a player and a supporter who gets ignored, passed over, because the manager is too busy focusing on the people below the line that cause the most pain? If they're constantly working with the snipers and the terrorists, what message do our players and supporters get? If I want to be noticed, I need to be one of them. That actually means we create what we don't want by focusing in the wrong place most of the time. What would happen if we worked with our players and supporters and built their self-esteem as if it was a bucket that was overflowing. So how could our players and supporters' overflowing buckets of self-esteem help everybody else? Well, let's take our snipers and zombies. They have low self-esteem, their bucket's half empty. If we help them build their self-esteem so their bucket becomes full, where would they go? The only place they can exist with high self-esteem is in our players and supporters' books. But crucially, what happens next? If our snipers and zombies leap the attitude hurdle, our terrorists get left behind. Now what choices can they make? High self-esteem supports high-performing teams. That's got to be our quest. So now we understand people's behaviours within our culture. Let's take that model, lay it on its side and make it 3D. Kind of like a pyramid, the pyramid of our management structure. And consider what happens when we have players, supporters, zombies, snipers and terrorists at every single layer. Because we recognise we've got it at operator layer, but imagine what happens if we've got a supervisor who's maybe below the line, or worse, a manager or leader who's a zombie, sniper or terrorist. I wonder what effect that has on the levels of self-esteem, the attitude and energy we see within the team below that individual. Would it be fair to say we're probably going to see the shadow of our leaders? If we have a supervisor, manager or leader with low self-esteem, they hold the people below them down. They make sure nobody's light shines more than theirs. If somebody below them comes up with a great idea, they'll steal it and reproduce it as their own 6 months later. Because the worst thing that can happen to somebody with low self-esteem is having to promote somebody below them with an idea better than they could come up with. The opposite effect is also true. High self-esteem supervisors, managers and leaders support, promote and even nurture great ideas from the people below them. So how malleable is self-esteem and real performance? Well, let's consider the opposite ends of the same spectrum. We almost predict a negative outcome by constantly looking for negative failings. If we look for negatives, we find negatives, and more interestingly, we create in the people we observe the potential to create more negatives. Now compare that study with the way we do health and safety culture. We're constantly going out and looking for what we've got wrong and writing huge reports to demonstrate we found what was wrong and maybe we fixed it. So let's look at the positive end of the spectrum. There's a great lesson to learn from the work of Rosenthal, the great psychologist. He studied teachers and kids and schools and their academic performance, and he wanted to find out what would happen if he took the best school with the best teachers and the best kids and monitored their performance over a full academic year. At the end of the year, Rosenthal got the 3 best teachers in with the headmaster, and they discussed the excellent results that they found their students achieved over that previous year. In the first term, the students were 18% higher than everybody else in the school and the county. In the second term, 39% higher than everybody else. And then the third and final term, 52% higher in their stats than everybody else. And Rosenthal asked the teachers, well, what do you think? At this point, the teachers were at best a little confused why the study had even taken place. Because if you give the best teachers to the best kids with the best school, you're going to get the best results. And then Rosenthal dropped the bomb. Actually, I chose the kids at random. Now clearly at this point the teachers think, wow, we must be great. And then he drops the second bomb. I chose you at random too. What had Rosenthal proven? Well, simply this: give people a great reputation to live up to, and they do. So high self-esteem and high-performing teams are absolutely linked. For far too long we've been looking in the wrong direction, running east looking for a sunset. We need to start building the self-esteem of our teams to enable them to outperform us as an organisation.